Real quick before we roll this footage, Elizabeth Warren just caught Pete Hegseth in one of the most perfectly constructed double standard traps you're ever going to see in a confirmation hearing, and the moment she sprung it is going to make you laugh and make you think and make you genuinely concerned about the man who is now in charge of the entire United States military. He wrote that generals should be banned from the defense industry for 10 years after they retire. Warren asked him if he would make the same commitment for himself. And what happened next is something you need to see with your own eyes. Watch this.
Women do not belong in combat. Now, Mr. Hegseth, you have written that after they retire, generals should be banned from working for the defense industry for 10 years. You and I agree on the corrosive effects of the revolving door between the Pentagon and defense contractors. It's something I would have liked to talk to you about if you'd come and been willing to visit with me. But the question I have for you on this is, will you put your money where your mouth is and agree that when you leave this job, you will not work for the defense industry for 10 years?
Senator, it's not even a question I've thought about because it's not one
think about it right now.
It's not one. My motivation for this job.
I understand
has never
that. I
been
just
about
need
what
a
could
yes or no
conceivably
here.
come next.
Time is short. I just need a yes or no.
I would consult with the president about what the policy should be
In
at the Defense
other
Department.
words, you're quite sure that every general who serves should not go directly into the defense industry for 10 years, but you're not willing to make that same pledge?
I'm not a general, Senator.
You'll be the one, let us just be clear, in charge of the generals. So you're saying sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander?
I would want to see what the policy of the president
Oh,
is.
I'll bet you would.
Thank you, Senator Warren. Senator Tuberville.
Welcome back to Winner's Breakdowns. I'm Winner. And if that clip made you laugh and then immediately made you feel something more serious underneath the laughter, then you're processing it exactly the way it deserves to be processed. Because what Warren did in that exchange was funny on the surface and genuinely important underneath, and I want to make sure we engage with both layers completely. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button. Drop a comment telling me what you thought the moment Warren said sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander, because I read every single one, and I want to know if you caught the full weight of what she was pointing at. Let's get into all of it, because I want to start with something that I think is important context for understanding why this particular exchange matters beyond its obvious entertainment value. The revolving door between the Pentagon and the defense industry is one of the most serious and most documented corruption problems in the entire American defense establishment. It is not a partisan issue. It is not something that only Democrats care about or that only happens under one party or the other. It is a structural problem that serious people across the political spectrum have been trying to address for decades. The basic dynamic is straightforward and deeply corrupting. Senior military officers spend their careers making decisions about weapons systems, defense contracts, and military procurement. Defense companies know that those officers have relationships, institutional knowledge, and ongoing influence over the colleagues who are still in uniform making those same decisions. So when those officers retire, the defense companies hire them at enormous salaries, and the officers use their relationships and their influence and their continued access to push for the contracts and the weapons systems that benefit their new employers. The result is a defense procurement system that is systematically distorted toward the interests of major defense contractors rather than toward the strategic needs of the military and the fiscal responsibility to the taxpayer. Weapon systems that do not work get funded because the retired general who sits on the defense contractors board has relationships with the active duty generals making the procurement recommendation. Contracts get renewed that should be renegotiated because the contractor's newly hired former official knows exactly how to work the system. And the American taxpayer pays billions of dollars more than they should for military equipment that performs below the standards that were promised when the contract was signed. Hegseth himself recognized this problem clearly enough to write about it. He wrote that generals should be banned from working in the defense industry for 10 years after they retire. 10 years. That is a serious and specific proposal that reflects a genuine understanding of how the revolving door works and why it is corrupting. He was not vague about it. He He was not hedging. He put a specific number on it, and he published his view. And that view is actually correct. A 10-year cooling-off period would be a meaningful reform that would genuinely reduce the corrupting influence of the revolving door by creating enough separation between a military career and a defense industry career that the ongoing relationships and access that make the revolving door problematic would have substantially diminished by the time the transition happened. So Warren came to that confirmation hearing with Hegseth's own words. She had his published position on the revolving door. She expressed genuine agreement with that position. She said it was something she would have liked to discuss with him if he had been willing to come and meet with her before the hearing, which is itself a notable aside about his conduct during the confirmation process. And she asked the most natural and most obvious follow-up question that anyone who takes the revolving door problem seriously would ask. If you believe that generals should not work for the defense industry for 10 years after they retire, will you make the same commitment for yourself when you leave the role as Secretary of Defense? It is a perfect question. It is the question that reveals whether Hegseth's concern about the revolving door is a genuine policy principle or a position of convenience that he applies to others but exempt himself from. And the answer he gave is one of the most revealing non-answers I have heard in any confirmation hearing in recent memory. He said it is not something he has thought about because his motivation for this job has never been about what comes next. He said time is short. He said he would consult with the president about what the policy should be. Let me unpack each of those non-answers because I think they deserve careful examination. He has not thought about it. This man wrote publicly and specifically about the revolving door between the Pentagon and the defense industry. He put a specific number, 10 years, on the cooling-off period he believed generals should observe. The question of whether the Secretary of Defense, the most powerful civilian in the entire American military establishment, should be subject to that same standard is the most obvious extension of that published position. If you have thought carefully enough about the revolving door to write about it and propose a specific remedy, the idea that you have never considered whether that remedy should apply to you is not credible. Either he thought about it and does not like the answer, or he is telling us that his thinking about the revolving door was not really principled analysis, but was rather a position of political convenience that he never intended to apply to himself. His motivation has never been about what comes next. This is the kind of statement that sounds noble and selfless in the moment and means absolutely nothing as a commitment. What it actually says is I'm not going to make a binding promise about my future conduct because I prefer to keep my options open. The test of whether someone's motivation is really not about what comes next, is whether they are willing to commit in advance to limiting their post-service options. If the commitment costs nothing, it proves nothing. The whole point of a revolving door reform is that it costs something. It limits what you can do after you leave government service. Hegseth's refusal to make that commitment, while simultaneously claiming his motivation is not about what comes next, is a contradiction that Warren spotted immediately and that deserves to be named clearly. He would consult with the president about what the policy should be. Warren's response to this was perfect and deserved the laughter it got. She said, "I'll bet you would." Because consulting with the president about what the policy should be is not an answer to a question about what Hegseth personally believes and what he is personally willing to commit to. He already told us what the policy should be. He wrote it down. He published it. 10-year ban for generals. The question was whether he would apply that same standard to himself. Saying he would consult the president is a way of outsourcing the commitment to someone else, so that if it becomes politically convenient to not make the commitment, he can blame the president's policy rather than his own choice. And Warren's closing line. Sauce for the goose, but certainly not sauce for the gander. It is an old expression, and she deployed it perfectly. The sauce for the goose principle is one of the most fundamental fairness principles in public life. If you argue that a rule is important and necessary and the right policy for other people, you should be willing to apply that rule to yourself. If you believe the revolving door is corrupting enough that generals should observe a 10-year cooling-off period before joining the defense industry, then you either believe the revolving door is corrupting because of something inherent to the relationship between military service and defense industry employment, or you do not really believe what you wrote. Hegseth's refusal to make the same commitment that he publicly argued generals should make reveals that his concern about the revolving door is a principle he applies selectively rather than a genuine conviction about why the revolving door is corrupting. And this matters beyond the entertainment value of watching Warren spring the trap and hearing the laughter in the room. It matters because Pete Hegseth is now the Secretary of Defense. He is in charge of a department with a budget in the hundreds of billions of dollars. He makes decisions about which weapons systems get funded, which defense contracts get awarded, which military programs get prioritized. Every one of those decisions potentially affects the financial interests of defense companies that might be interested in hiring him when he leaves government service. The revolving door problem that he wrote about and declined to commit to avoiding for himself is not a theoretical concern for some future secretary. It is a present and concrete concern for the secretary who is making those decisions right now. The man who is in charge of the generals, as Warren correctly pointed out, believes the generals should follow a rule that he himself is not willing to follow. That is not leadership by example. That is not the kind of accountability that the most powerful civilian in the American military establishment should be modeling for the institution he leads. And Warren called it out with precision and with a line that cut through all the evasion and landed exactly where it needed to land. Democrats need to keep doing exactly this. Keep holding nominees and officials to the standards they have themselves articulated in their own published words. Keep asking the simple and direct questions that reveal whether stated principles are genuine convictions or positions of convenience. Keep applying the sauce for the goose principle. If you believe something is right for others, you should be willing to apply it to yourself. Keep making the revolving door and the corruption of the defense establishment a serious accountability issue rather than letting it slide into the background noise of Washington business as usual. The defense industry's relationship with the Pentagon costs American taxpayers billions of dollars every year, and the people who cycle between military leadership and defense industry boardrooms are the ones who benefit most from that arrangement, while ordinary Americans pay for it. Warren demonstrated in that exchange that holding powerful people to their own stated standards is not complicated. It does not require elaborate procedural maneuvering or weeks of investigation. Sometimes it just requires reading someone their own words and asking the most obvious follow-up question. The laughter in that room was the sound of everyone present recognizing that Hegseth had been caught in the clearest possible double standard and could not find a way out of it. So drop a comment and tell me what landed for you in that clip. Was it the moment Warren revealed she had his own published position ready? Was it the "I would consult with the president" non-answer? Was it the sauce for the goose line and the laughter it produced? Was it the underlying point about what his refusal to commit reveals about whether his revolving door concern is a genuine principle or a convenient one? Was it the broader implication for how he will make decisions as Secretary of Defense, knowing he has deliberately kept his post-service options open? I want to hear all of it, because this is exactly the kind of honest accountability conversation Winners Breakdowns was built for. If you believe that the revolving door between the Pentagon and the defense industry is a genuine corruption problem that costs taxpayers billions, if you believe that the man in charge of the generals should be willing to follow the rules he argues the generals should follow, and if you think Elizabeth Warren did exactly what a senator is supposed to do when she had that question ready and that line prepared, then you know exactly what to do right now. Hit that subscribe button, smash that like, and share this video with somebody who thinks the defense establishment corruption problem is someone else's concern and needs to understand why it is everybody's concern when the person declining to commit to his own stated standard is now running the whole thing. This has been Winners Breakdowns. Stay informed, stay consistent in your principles, hold power accountable to its own words, and I will catch you in the next one.